Did you know that Nazi ideology was inspired by an English writer who claimed to get his ideas from demons? And who was related to British Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain, the man who later declared war on Adolf Hitler's Germany? This is the bizarre story of Houston Stewart Chamberlain. He was a troubled and mentally ill man who suffered a series of breakdowns and had paranoid fantasies about Jews and black people plotting world domination. His writing is full of contradictions and pseudoscience, but he was hailed by the German nationalists of the early 20th century and became a public intellectual, gaining the admiration of Kaiser Wilhelm and later Hitler himself. Chamberlain was born in 1855 in Hampshire to a navy family. At first destined for a military career, Chamberlain suffered from poor health and instead went to study at university in Geneva, later working as a stockbroker. Over the years, he became more and more obsessed with German culture, particularly the work of composer Richard Wagner. He even went on to marry one of Wagner's daughters. According to the American journalist William Shirer, Chamberlain was given to seeing demons who, by his own account, drove him on relentlessly to seek new fields of study and get on with his prodigious writings. One day, after being supposedly visited by a demon, he got off his train early at Gardoni in Italy, where he locked himself in a hotel room for a week and wrote a maniacal paper that he would later develop into his twisted theory of race and history. His bestseller, Foundations of the 19th Century, was also supposedly written under the spell of one of these demons between 1897 and 1898. The book claimed that Germanic people were superior to those of other races, and that European culture had become corrupted by Jewish influences. He believed that Germanic people were descended from white Aryans who were responsible for humanity's greatest achievements in history. Chamberlain's confused writing spread racist tropes, including the idea that race mixing was infecting the Indo-Europeans with Jewish blood. Despite his flawed logic, the book was a hit. Unified Germany, which Chamberlain had made his home, was still a young country thirsty for a national myth, and hundreds of thousands of copies were sold. One ardent reader was Kaiser Wilhelm II. The Kaiser himself was half British, which gave him a sense of insecurity about his own Germanness. When he met this British writer who was convinced that Germans were a superior people, he couldn't resist. In his letters to the Kaiser, Chamberlain said that the future of mankind depended on Germany achieving its national goals, writing in 1906 that there was a looming war of the races in which there will be no quarter given. The Kaiser was so impressed that he gave Chamberlain the Iron Cross after making him a naturalized German citizen in 1916. Chamberlain tried to join the German army at the age of 58 to fight against the British in World War I, but was rejected due to his bad health. Instead, he began writing pro-German propaganda, and his war essays put the sole blame for World War I on the British. In the essays, Chamberlain describes the British as unwarlike, saying, "The English are not soldiers and not bold, daring mariners, but were solely enticed on the water by trade." But with his characteristically confused logic, he goes on to contradict himself by saying that there is nothing more brutal in the world than a brutal Englishman. He has no other resource than his brutality. Meanwhile, Chamberlain tries to convince the reader that the German people are entirely peaceful. In the whole of Germany during the last 43 years, he writes, not a single man has lived who desired war. No, not a single one. Kaiser Wilhelm, Chamberlain writes, had a turbulent desire to preserve peace for Germany. It's not surprising that this kind of rhetoric was fuel for the fire of rising anti-Semitism and German nationalism. Chamberlain, in his later years, became something of a prophet to Hitler and was praised as the spiritual founder of the Third Reich by Nazi publications. The aged writer had met the Nazi party leader in 1923 and was instantly taken by his charisma, pouring praise on him in a letter the next day. "With one stroke you have transformed the state of my soul," he wrote. "That in the hour of her deepest need, Germany gives birth to a Hitler, proves her vitality." Hitler also mentioned him in Mein Kampf, praising the principles of civil wisdom laid down by thinkers like Houston Stewart Chamberlain. The British Germanophile joined the Nazi Party and wrote for its publications until his death in 1927. Hitler was the only public figure who attended his funeral. So, is it fair to say that World War II was predicted by a demon-possessed writer? Or can the strange story of Houston Stewart Chamberlain be explained by something more ordinary? Well, it's clear that Chamberlain was a confused thinker and mentally ill, but what makes his life story so interesting is how influential he ended up being. In fact, the same could be said about Hitler himself. It's easy to look back at history with the hindsight that we have now and see that these were deranged, unstable, and dangerous men. But a unique combination of factors had influenced Germany in the early 20th century. Rapid industrialization, mass media, and new technologies all coalesced into a toxic mix in the humiliating aftermath of World War I. I think Chamberlain's story is the perfect example of how the darkest parts of the human mind, if fed and encouraged under the right circumstances, can lead to huge carnage and destruction, with millions of lives being lost. But what do you think? Leave a comment below. And if you found this video interesting, please like and subscribe.